Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Wednesday, September 12th, 2012. A look at Tropical Storm Nadine. What a pretty system. It really is a very well organized tropical storm with banding cloud features coming in and outflow well established generally over the area. Still some dry air lingering around it to the north and east, but this is going to go on to become a hurricane. And in my opinion, considering what we have seen happen up here in the subtropics, away from the deep tropics, this will probably become a major hurricane as it turns and heads back off to the east. Ultimately, probably going to be a problem over in the Azores. Again, you had to deal with Gordon over there. Now it looks like Nadine's going to track through to the southern part of the Azores in the next several days. They don't show it here being a major hurricane, but my suspicion is that with water temperatures running above normal across a good deal of this region through here, and the way that Nadine looks now, it'll develop an inner core and probably become a major hurricane. We just might see, as it starts to turn here, enough energy coming out of it, since it's fairly large, to send some swells towards Bermuda and the East Coast, so surfers be on the lookout for that. It's going to have to really ramp up to do so because it is pretty far away even from Bermuda, much less the east coast of the U.S. In the eastern Pacific, Tropical Depression 11E, this will develop and head off to the west-northwest towards this colder water out here. Not going to be a problem for Mexico. And the forecast track from the Hurricane Center shows that nicely. Pretty strong high pressure still sitting out over the eastern Pacific, keeping any developments from turning north into Mexico for now. That could change as we head into the fall, as we start dropping more troughs of low pressure into the western United States and western North America. But no such luck right now, so all the developments will be heading off to the west away from Mexico. One area where there is going to be a problem is out here in the Pacific, the western Pacific. This is the Korean Peninsula. Here is southwest Japan. And this is Typhoon Sanba, I think that's how you say it, S-A-N-B-A, and this is going to track north and really be a strong typhoon. This is the map from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Really going to be a problem up here for some area in the western Pacific. You can see here is Seoul in Korea, and then here is Japan, there's Kyoto, and then Tokyo sitting up here. Tokyo is about the same as you would look at Cape Hatteras in terms of geographic teleconnection, I guess is one way to look at it. And so this typhoon coming in would be very similar to something coming into Florida, South Florida, and really hitting the peninsula hard. So folks in the western Pacific are going to really need to watch this. Joint Typhoon Warning Center having it up to 105 knots. And remember too that a typhoon and a hurricane are the exact same thing structurally. They just tend to be a little larger because the basin is larger for them to roam around in, but typhoons and hurricanes, no different structurally speaking. In the Atlantic Basin, when will things change to where we might have a threat to land areas, since Nadine is going to just be out in the open Atlantic, maybe threatening the Azores? That's obviously land, but in terms of land masses like the United States or the Caribbean islands, etc., I don't see anything over the next week or so, but beyond that time frame, the GFS indicating a possible change to the MJO pattern that might put it into a more favorable phase as we get towards the latter part of the month. And if we look at the map version of that, here we are now with generally negative conditions for upward motion, except right here where Nadine is forming. It's slightly better conditions. Very favorable out here where our typhoon is. But if we go out into time, we see that at the end of the month, around the 27th of September, more green shows up, especially here in the Caribbean, the western Atlantic, and we start to shut things down in the western Pacific. And usually when that happens, you see an uptick in activity in the Atlantic. So I would suspect that based on this, and based on the natural progression of things during the season, that once we get past the 20th through the 25th of the month, in other words, in about 10 days, we should start to expect to see more of a chance of something developing that could impact maybe the United States, maybe the Caribbean, Central America, and that goes along, like I said, with the natural progression of things for the hurricane season as we shift the development from the open Atlantic back west towards the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing out there right now, though. A good rest of the week ahead, that's for sure. And we'll see what happens. You never know. Could be a pretty busy end to the season as we get through this next favorable MJO pulse that is apparently coming around. Well, there's a look at the tropics from the Atlantic to the Eastern Pacific and even the West Pacific today. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, my website, hurricanetrack.com. Appreciate you watching. Always my pleasure to produce these for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I'll be back to do that again tomorrow.